All right, welcome back to Just Action July and August. We're on our third movie, and this is probably one of my favorite movies that I discovered later on in my younger years. I hope you guys enjoy.
Smoke and mirrors, guys. Welcome to the movie factory.
Ooh, so exciting, isn't it?
Trust me.
Please, we can kill it.
Ferocious, aren't they? I'm trying to put Tiger Bomb on this jungle's nuts.
Want your eyes, bitch?
You're not gonna die, you bitch.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Now you want to get nuts? Wakanda forever! Yes! Fuck you too!
You're gonna see some serious shit.
Welcome back, everyone, to Smoke and Mirrors. I'm Rob. This week we are going to look at John Woo's 1992 action epic Hard Boiled, which I absolutely love. So this one, as I said, directed by John Woo. It's written by Barry Wong, but Barry Wong actually passed away before he could finish the script. So John Woo stepped in and he finished it. We also had Gordon Chan, who remains uncredited on this for some reason, which is weird. This one stars Chow Yun-fat as Inspector Tequila Yen. We have Tony Leung, a very young Mandarin, as Alan. We have Teresa Mo as Teresa Chang. We have Philip Chan, who we've seen in Bloodsport, as Superintendent Pang. We have Philip Kwok as Mad Dog. We have Anthony Wong as Johnny Wong. And we have Hoi San Kwan as Uncle Hoi. This one had a budget of 35 million Hong Kong dollars, which translates to roughly 4.5 million US. And its gross was around 20 million Hong Kong dollars, which is about 2.5 million US. So yes, it seems like it lost money in Hong Kong, but the critical reception of this movie was really good. It was actually the critical reception which allowed John Woo to move to the States and start making movies there, because China at that time didn't want any more of these sort of guts and glory hardcore action movies that John Woo and a lot of the other formidable and memorable directors of the time were putting together. So the plot on this one is a committed Inspector Tequila Yen must team up with undercover agent Alan to bring down Johnny Wong's arms ring in Hong Kong. So originally the movie was actually going to be this madman who he's poisoned the formula in Hong Kong and he was killing babies. But then John Woo sort of looked at the plot and he was like, that is way too dark. He also didn't want people doing like any copycat plots or sort of doing the same thing, because they had taken that idea from a real person that did that. So I'm kind of glad that they moved away from that. It definitely allowed more focus on the cops and that story, and also gave Tony Leung, who was going to play the villain in that version, he was going to be the madman, allowed him to actually shine in this other role. So my memories. So I first discovered this movie when I was about 13 years old, and I was blown away. So I'd never heard of John Woo. I didn't know who Chow Yun-fat was. I think my first introduction to Chow Yun-fat was The Replacement Killers. And then seeing that, I was like, this guy is actually pretty cool. I didn't understand the mystique, but then my oldest brother came home with this VHS, and it had the guy from The Replacement Killers, Chow Yun-fat. On the cover, he had a shotgun, he had a baby in his arm, and he was wearing one of those cool tactical vests. So I checked it out. I looked at the runtime. When you're 13 years old, 2 hours and 8 minutes is like a really, really long time. So when I watched it, I was blown away. There were so many memorable action set pieces. And what I can remember is that there wasn't anything that I had seen before. in action. And I'd been looking at like Terminator 2, Total Recall, all the Van Damme movies, all the Arnie movies, all the Bruce Willis movies, all of them, but they didn't have what this movie had. So from that day on, I was like a lifelong John Woo fan. So cut to present day me, and I'm watching the movie, and I'm appreciating things that I didn't before. The way that things are done, the practical nature of the production, some of the more subtle dramatic moments in the story as well, and also the photography, which is beautiful. This is stuff that we just don't see anymore. So again, like, I'm still blown away by it. So let's break down the four parts of an action movie, which is the heroes, the villain, the action, and if it still holds up. So a little bit of a look back. So we get two heroes this time, two main heroes. We get Inspector Tequila Yen, played by Chow Yun-fat. So he's this nonchalant, sarcastic, sort of by any means necessary type cop. He has massive problems with his superiors and not obeying them. Funny enough, he plays jazz clarinet because John Woo is a massive jazz fan. And he's kind of sweet on his co-worker Teresa. There's a couple of things in there where they're sort of, are they together? Are they not together? But it's never the focus, being the action movie that it is. So the character of Tequila Yen is largely inspired by Inspector Toshi, who was the lead on the Zodiac Killer case. So he and other on-screen cops like Bullet, that was played by Steve McQueen, and Harry Callahan, who was played by Clint Eastwood. The character of Tequila is a crack shot. He's extremely accurate when he needs to be. Other times he's just spraying bullets everywhere. And he does cross the line on a few occasions to bring the villain to justice. At the start of the movie, very early on, he gets like the fuel to do what he needs to do when his friend is actually gunned down in this raid that happens at the start of the movie. And funny enough, so being a 2-hour and 8-minute movie, Chow Yun-fat actually went to director John Woo and said, hey, my character's actually, like, a lot of his scenes have been cut out, and it's pretty thin at the moment. So I need for you to add just like this mentor, best friends kind of scene, and I want you to play the best friend. So in an hour, John Woo cooked up this dialogue and put together a couple of scenes where him and Chow Yun-fat could actually like sort of go back and forth between each other and develop that character a bit more. Chow Yun-fat actually wanted John Woo to play the character so that John Woo wouldn't cut the scenes. It's funny because like there's 2 or 3 of them that show up in this, and they're actually pretty good. There's nothing too deep that really kind of adds massive weight to the character, but it's nice just seeing them in a gentler sort of setting and the scene playing out without them having to resort to violence or a gunfight or anything like that. We're also introduced to Alan. So Alan he's stylish, he's thoughtful, he's emotional. He's kind of on the verge of being burnt out, being an undercover cop. So it's a lot like The Departed in the sense that he goes straight from the academy to being undercover with the Triad. His role in the Triad, he's like a gang enforcer. He's and he's almost like a smiling killer. So he's extremely cocky. Not over the top cocky, but he's cocky enough that, like, you know, nothing seems to get to him and pierce his armor. He's forced over the edge when Johnny Wong, the main villain, decides to put him in a position where he either chooses him or he chooses his old boss. But if he chooses Johnny Wong to stick with him and be part of his crew, he has to kill his old boss. So he does what it takes to stay undercover, and he kills his old boss. Not only that, but he ends up killing a lot of his old friends in that crew as well. And we get like this nice emotional scene from Tony Leung. So he actually talked to John Woo during the production, and he was like, I think my character should cry in this. John Woo was like, nah, he doesn't need to cry. He's all good. And then they shot 2 takes, and one was with Leung crying. The other one was him not crying. And the one that actually made it into the film was him with tears in his eyes walking back. That character moment there is something that I appreciated now when I watched it. It definitely adds to the character in terms of he's built personal relationships even if he is undercover, he's got a personal connection to a lot of these guys, and he feels for them. So having to cross the line, kill his former boss and mentor, and someone that obviously was pretty important in his life, carries a weight to it. It also adds to the fuel of, well, I need to kill this Johnny Wong guy because he's pretty ruthless. So John Woo originally wanted to kill Tony Leung's character, Alan. But Chow Yun-fat and a lot of the crew members and producers kind of said, no, don't, because he's been through a lot of shit. Why would you kill him at the end? I like the idea of a tragic character. I would have liked for him to die, to really sort of give the film an ending where it's not happy. Through the events of the film, it's not a happy ending. So I would have been okay with a pretty dour and sad ending for our hero, but no, John Woo actually changed it last minute. And like I said before, this character was originally supposed to be the villain as well. So let's have a look at the villains. So we have Johnny Wong. So he's ruthless. In one scene, he's shooting hospital patients just to get them out of the way. He's willing to kill anyone in his path just to attain riches or to take turf, and to show he's like the top dog in this area of Hong Kong. He likes putting his men in positions where they have to make these very amoral choices, especially when we see him do that to Alan in early on in the film. But another action trope where the villain needs to be strong is also sort of cast out. So Johnny Wong isn't intimidating at all. He's got to have his henchman, Mad Dog, do a lot of the heavy lifting for him in terms of this is why he's intimidating. Which brings us to Mad Dog. So Mad Dog, played by Philip Kwok, who was originally in, I believe, the 36th Chamber of Shaolin. So he plays his character. He was the action coordinator on the set. So he plays his character that's just a badass, man. Like, things happen to him and he just takes it in stride and keeps moving and he keeps kicking ass. So he's really efficient. He's deadly with guns or hand-to-hand combat. So he's kind of like that double threat killer. For a gangster, he's got a moral code, it's cool. I like that. One of his things is he hates what did he say? He hates cops and he hates men that turn on their old bosses. So already he's got some shit with Alan there. So after writing the Johnny Wong part, John Woo actually found that that character wasn't that intimidating and he needed to add someone. So that's where this character came from, so that he could pose a bigger threat. Let's have a look at that action. So before we get into it, just know that John Woo shoots his films in sequence. So he'll start at the start and end at the end, just so that he can have a look personally through the action sequences and make sure that every action set piece tops the other one in terms of scale, in terms of stakes, and in terms of just action in general. So this movie is massive with action. It's got 3 main set pieces, and they're not small set pieces. So we get the tea house, we get a warehouse sequence, and we get the hospital sequence at the end. So the tea house sequence is Tequila he's sort of surveilling this this guy that's trying to make an arms deal in this tea house. And then all hell breaks loose when one of the cops gets found out. And he knocks like this bird cage off the table. And then the bird cage smashes and it reveals the guns in there. And they're neatly kind of placed out where they need to be. And then the shootout sort of happens. So in the shootout, we get Chow Yun-fat jumping from booth to booth, 2 guns shooting through the air. A lot of the John Woo tropes right there, because you got birds, you got slow motion, you got 2 guns, you got jumping through the air, cover to cover, which was a lot of his trademark sort of moves back then. We get something that was kind of ad-libbed on the night, which is at the end of this gunfight, Chow Yun-fat's character slides down the rails and akimbo guns in hand, he shoots these guys in the back. Like, it's almost like RoboCop when Ed 209 kills that guy on the table, sort of like that. So they made that up on the spot. And then we get that character trait of Tequila, where he's willing to cross the line, because there's a scene, and Chow Yun-fat actually thought of this. There's a scene where they're in the back of the kitchen, and like there's flour in the air and everything, and Tequila gets covered in flour, and then he kills the guy that he's chasing, because the guy killed his partner. He kills him and blood shoots all over his face. There's a nice contrast there as well, but that was Chow Yun's idea. But also him, like Tequila, the character, crossing the line in that scene. So while they were shooting this tea house sequence, the cops would be called every night by the residents that lived around there, because it was way too loud and they were shooting at night and everything. And the cops, being John Woo fans, would always let John Woo finish his shoot every night while they were there. So Terrence Chang also said that gangs would roll around every so often, just to kind of say, like, all right, well, if you're going to be shooting in this area, you need a protection. In order to get that, you need to pay us. So they would be paying gangs off left, right, and center just to kind of shoot in that area. The next big action sequence we have is this warehouse sequence. So this sequence is it's about setting up Alan, who's the undercover cop played by Tony Leung, setting up his allegiance. So Johnny Wong kind of puts him in a position where, hey, kill your old boss or stay with your old boss and die. Up to you. So Alan chooses to kill his old boss. And then in the midst of all this shit going down, we get Tequila swinging in from the ceiling with a shotgun in hand, and he basically takes on a whole army by himself. We get some of the best looking sequences in this scene. Just when the gang, Johnny Wong's gang, is storming that warehouse, there's scenes of explosions and people flying and motorcycles all in the one scene. You don't see this a lot. It's all practical. There's no CG. It's captured in frame, and it's beautiful. It's almost like action ballet. But when Tequila swings in, he's shooting those motorbikes in the tank, and it's almost like he's got explosive shells, because sparks fly out everywhere when he does. And yeah, they explode. And I think this became like a big thing later on as well. I think John Woo uses this in Hard Target too. And And the whole sequence is better than anything that we see today. All sort of bolstered by this music, which was this heavy kind of almost jazz drums, these light sort of touches. And then there's like this peak crescendo of dun, 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 dun. These horns that kind of come in that really kind of make it feel almost pulpy 50s, and I don't know if it cheapens the feel. It definitely doesn't take away from the impact, but it lets you know that the movie is fun as well. It's not just dead serious. And then we get the hospital sequence at the end. So this sequence is 50 minutes long. I mean, from an action set piece point of view, after you get the warehouse, after you get the tea house, and then you get the hospital, you'd kind of be feeling like Michael Bay exhausted. But not here. Because they mix it up so much, it allows every action sequence to kind of feel really fresh. So we got a couple of standouts here. So we got there's a shootout / fight with Mad Dog that happens in a couple of stages through the hospital part. We have the baby evacuation. So this is all these babies that are in the hospital. They're trying to get them out so that, like, you know, before the hospital explodes, because it's rigged with C4, obviously. So they're sliding them out the window, and kind of like they forget one, so Tequila has to go get him. It's pretty cool. If you watch it, like it definitely adds stakes to the situation. We also get like this massive hospital explosion. So when the hospital goes up in flames, we see it, and it's all unpractical, very much like the Dark Knight scene. But we have Chow Yun-fat, who runs through these holes while the floor's kind of exploding. He's got like this fake baby in his arms, and he's kind of running through. Anyways, they had to shoot that scene twice because John Woo wasn't happy with how far the explosions looked from Chow Yun-fat. So then John Woo actually took the detonator for the charges and then shot the scene again, setting the explosions off right behind Chow Yun-fat, so that when you see him in the movie, like he's scared out of his mind. He actually is, because Chow Yun-fat was running for his life in that sequence. Where after the take, Chow Yun came over and he was like, "How did it look?" And then John Woo was like, "It looked amazing." And then Chow Yun-fat was like, "You motherfucker." And then we get introduced to this crack shot thing that Inspector Tequila does. So he sets up where he wants to shoot, and then kind of like takes a break, like he's stretching and stuff, and then just automatically gets into it, and wherever he shoots is where he's supposed to shoot. And they set this up very early in the hospital sequence, and then they use it in the end as well. But the sort of the big sort of sequence in this hospital set piece is this one shot. So this is Alan and Chow Yun-fat's character Tequila clearing out these 2 floors in one shot. So how they did it was they kind of went through, shot what they needed to do on the first shot, and then they both get into like this elevator, and then the doors close. They have some dialogue between them. In that dialogue between them, it gave the crew 20 seconds to clear all the debris, reset the set, and then when the doors open, they're going again. The tricky thing about this is that they only had one shot to get this right, which is scary because there's so many technical aspects to this shot. There's Tequila's shotgun that when he shoots it, there's almost like a wind effect. There's sparks. There's debris that flies out. There's squib packets that kind of go off on the guys as well. The vests are going. people have to fall a certain way and act through it. There's glass smashing. There's so many different things. Actually, in one of the sequences, Tony Leung actually got glass close to his eye that cut his face, and he had to take a day off just to go get it looked at, and then reported right back to set. Where it's these insane sequences. I can't imagine them doing them like this ever again. But it pays off because it adds so much intensity to the sequences that you don't know what's going to happen. It's so creative. And actually on set, John Woo was saying that like he doesn't plan anything out. He just kind of goes with the flow in terms of this is what we should do in this sequence and then go from there on the day. So for them to actually put this together on the day is amazing. And the results kind of speak for themselves. So those are the three big ones, but then we kind of get these mini ones as well. So there's another one where there's like this boat meetup. So Tequila finds out who Alan is, where he's staying, and he goes to interrogate him and either kill him or they're going to team up. But then thugs from Alan's old crew show up and they try to get revenge for Alan killing Uncle Hoy, his old boss, and their friends. But Alan actually gets shot in the back in that sequence, but Tequila kind of steps in and he helps protect Alan through that. And we get these masterful shots. There's one where Tequila, because they're on like this boardwalk, because that's where his boat's moored, is he dives while this guy shoots this it looks like a mailbox almost, and it flies almost at the character, almost like 3D cinematography. But the timing of it and everything is done so well that it's just beautiful to look at. So the total body count for this movie is actually 307 bodies, which is crazy. That's on-screen violence, and it's definitely earned that R rating. So this movie was cut in a lot of different territories, especially Germany, where I think they cut like 30 minutes out of it. In the UK, pre-DVD, there was no VHS out that actually had the uncut version. And a lot of it, I think they cut up to 8 minutes of footage from this movie. But now, if you go check it out, I think there's a Criterion Blu-ray that's discontinued. Dragon Dynasty did one. I think that's the one that I got a while ago. I think they're due for a 4K, to be honest. But every one of those new ones that have come out post-DVD have all been uncut. And I'm glad for it, man. So does the movie hold up? Hell yes. This is killer. This is the best shit that you will see that I believe trumps a lot of the modern day stuff that we get now. It's so well paced and intriguing in its action and how it kind of switches things up in those set pieces. It's well acted physically with the actual actors doing a lot of the stunts that you see on camera. There's very little CG. There's great chemistry between all of the actors on set. Theresa Mo, Philip Chan, Mad Dog, Johnny Wong. And those practical effects are just, they're immense. They're so good. And completely unmatchable by today's standards. So my final thoughts. I remember falling in love with John Woo with this one. It made me go check out The Killer. So this was the first John Woo movie that I watched. And then I checked out The Killer. Blackjack came out with Dolph Lundgren, which was shit. But I still had to watch it. Once a Thief, that came out. That was shit. But I still had to watch it. MI2 came out. And I watched that trailer for that movie every day 20 times. Easy. when that movie came out, I watched it like once a day for like a week, just because it was John Woo. Everything that John Woo touched to me was gold. I loved the style. I loved how heroic his heroes were. Their journey wasn't the greatest journey, but they kicked ass while they were doing it. So it just hit for me. There's been some homages to Hard Boiled, particularly with the Raid 1 and 2, how that was photographed, the mise-en-scene in those movies, even the villain. So in the first Raid, Mad Dog, who's played by Yayan, is a throwback to Hard Boiled, and it works. It really does work. And you can see the influence just in its use of practical effects in those movies. I also seen, like watching it again, why this is probably one of the most dangerous movies that you could ever make. I mean, you had Chow Yun-fat running through a fucking like burning building with explosions going off behind him. You had Tony Leung get glass in his face. Like there's squibs going off. There's pyrotechnics. There's debris flying throughout. People jumping through glass, and it's actually Philip Kwok, Mad Dog, jumping through the glass. And all of it just adds to the believability. Like you get sucked in with this movie, just from how they portray action. There's a scene with Tony Leung in that warehouse sequence where he dives through a car. Now they capture this in slow motion, but there are sparks shooting out everywhere around him, which makes for like the maddest shot. But if you were to try talk to an actor or try talk an actor into doing that shot nowadays, it'd be impossible unless it's Tom Cruise, which seems fitting that John Woo directed Mission Impossible 2. Hard Boiled actually had a sequel. So it was a video game called Stranglehold. And the game came out, and it was sort of like Max Payne-ish, where you could do the slow-mo, slow down time, and kind of jump through the air and shoot and stuff like that. Max Payne also being like a John Woo influence as well. And I remember playing it and loving it, but I almost wish like they just did a film version. The game was so big as well, with them like jumping off buildings and the whole building exploding and them sliding like down on like these wires and stuff like that. And the plot just being massive. And I kind of felt like, yeah, I loved it, but I wish like, you know, we got the film version and John Woo just directed it. But again, in the game, we kind of get you get the back and forth relationship with John Woo and Chow Yun-fat as well. And it helps with the character too. Just kind of keep it consistent throughout. So my last thought is this will always sit high on the list of action movies for me. In terms of cinematography and how action's portrayed in the film, I think it's the best looking action film we're ever going to get, because I don't think we're going to get anything this practically strong from any filmmaker ever. Just with like, you know, the insurance that kind of goes on and safety, health and safety guys going, well, you can't do that. You can do that, and capturing it in camera. It's probably the best John Woo movie for me, in my opinion. And it'll just stay as one of those all-time action greats. It's actually number 17 on someone's all-time action greats as well. I think it's Rolling Stones or Hollywood Reporter, one of them. Their top 50 action movies of all time. And it's fitting. All the elements in this movie work. Like, I actually thought, like, again, while I was, like, older, watching this, that it'd be so long and boring and stuff. But no, it hit its mark every time. And I had a blast watching it. And I hope you do too. If you haven't checked it out, check that shit out. It is worth having a look. Guys, thank you for joining me. If you'd like more content, you can like and subscribe our YouTube page, Logosmith Media. Check us out there. We host our podcast on Spreaker, also under Logosmith Media. You can follow us on Twitter at Smoke and Mirrors Oz, or check us out on Instagram and Facebook under Smoke and Mirrors Podcast. Guys, take care of yourself, love movies, and I will see you next week with the next movie. Bye.